Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. The NBA is back. 2 games last night and a full slate of games today. We will preview them all. Carlin Gay from Sporting News will tell us who will win, maybe who will win the championship, and we'll recap a historic night with the Lakers' father and son combination of LeBron James and Bronny James playing at the same time. In addition, of course, we've got our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report. Michael DeCourcy goes over the latest in the National Football League. And obviously, we're getting to the latest in the NFL off the field, because last night, while you were sleeping, or maybe early this morning, depending on when you woke up, you may have noticed that the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions, the undefeated team in the National Football League, have added another weapon to the offense for Patrick Mahomes. And this time, it is DeAndre Hopkins. The Tennessee Titans have sent a conditional pick over to Kansas City, where Hopkins obviously will be one of the main targets moving forward for the Chiefs. Juju Smith-Schuster has been hurt. Naturally, the Chiefs' offense has not resembled anything as it has in years past, but they've had one of the best defenses in the National Football League. So Hopkins immediately becomes an important piece of Kansas City moving forward, depending on how they use him clearly. And of course, Hopkins comes from Tennessee, previously Houston, third team in 4 years for Hopkins. In the National Basketball Association last night, the Los Angeles Lakers had the debut of Bronny James along with his dad, LeBron James. First time ever in NBA history, a father and son played on the same court. But for the Lakers last night, the big story was beating the Minnesota Timberwolves, thanks, of course, to Anthony Davis and company, who had a huge game, a 7-point win in the affair. And the Lakers get off to the right start and also cover the short number that was 1.5 as the Lakers move forward, trying to find the correct mix. And as you see there, Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. also on hand to watch the historical night. But for the new head coach, J.J. Redick of the Lakers, it was all about Anthony Davis and the big performance.
I mean, AD was phenomenal tonight. Felt like he attacked the game the right way. He was patient. There were times, and I've said this, like, we're trying to look for throw-aheads after misses and makes, and there's times he's just going to be trailing the play and we're attacking early, and he may go 3 or 4 possessions without getting it. It doesn't mean we call play for him and he forces a shot. He doesn't, he just plays the game the right way. But I thought overall, beyond just, him anchoring our defense, our guys really did a phenomenal job of executing our game plan.
It was a game plan that worked for the Lakers. Now, the game plan for the Knicks still unclear last night in their game against the Boston Celtics, but it definitely was not stopping the three-point shot, because the Celtics tied an NBA record on opening night, nailing 3 threes 29 different times. I don't even know if that made any sense, folks, here on the show, so let me try this again. They made 29 three-pointers in last night's game. That ties the NBA record. Jason Tatum had a monster game, as this game, by the way, goes way over the total. Interesting notes, with 4 teams playing last night, each scoring more than 100 points. Of course, the NBA is certainly happy to see that. They raised the rafters yesterday. Celtics, of course, covered the number in a big way. Tatum, one of the favorites to win the NBA's MVP this season. In the National Football League, we have yet another quarterback change. This time it is coming in Cleveland. Not a surprise, with Deshaun Watson out for the season and Dorian Thompson-Robinson suffering an injury in last week's game against the Bengals. Jameis Winston, you may have heard his name before, going to start this week for the Cleveland Browns. Good luck to him. All right, bad luck a little bit yesterday, you could say, for Andy Dalton, but good news in the sense that no one was seriously hurt. What am I talking about? Well, Dalton was involved in a car accident with his family yesterday. It's being reported that the medical staff did take a look at Dalton, but no serious injuries to him or his family. That's good news for sure. Also, really good news for the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo Samuel, who missed Sunday's game, or only played a couple snaps actually, because of pneumonia, was released from the hospital. Shanahan, the head coach of the 49ers, said that Samuel unclear to play this week. Brandon Ayuk out for the season. Alvin Kamara could end his career in New Orleans. It's what he said he wanted to do. He gets a 2-year contract extension worth $24.5 million. And here's the good news for Kamara. $22 million of that is guaranteed. In all likelihood, Kamara's career will end in New Orleans. Also, the Buccaneers will be without Chris Godwin and without Mike Evans for the near future. Todd Bowles says that Mike Evans is going to be out until after the team's bye week in week 11. That's a long time to not have two wide receivers. Rumors of Cooper Kupp being traded. Could he head to Tampa Bay? I guess we'll wait and see. The Kansas City Chiefs got some bad news from one of their cornerbacks yesterday. Jalen Watson's going to have surgery on his fibula and tibula. It's possible that he could return for the playoffs, but he's going to miss the remainder of the season. The Browns will need some other quarterback not named Winston this week, so Bailey Zappi was claimed by the Browns off the Chiefs practice squad. Looks like he'll be the backup going into the week. And also Cardinals linebacker Dennis Gardeck tore his ACL. He's going to miss the remainder of the season. Colorado is looking to potentially get a Heisman Trophy award for Travis Hunter. He's had a fantastic season, been banged up lately, but Coach Prime Deion Sanders says that his shoulder is improving and he could have a bigger role this week against Cincinnati. Prime said that he will be more productive because he's feeling better. Naturally, the game wasn't as important last week. Buffaloes were up 28-7. Ohio State's great left tackle Josh Simmons is going to be out for the season. He's a projected first-round pick. And also in college football yesterday, UTEP lost to Louisiana Tech. They did cover the 6.5 points in that game yesterday. In college football, we also saw a couple of games where things didn't go exactly as planned. Sam Houston State beat Florida International in a low-scoring affair, 10-7. They did cover the points. Tonight in college football, Liberty, 25.5-point road favorites against Kennesaw State, and Jacksonville State will take on Middle Tennessee State. For those of you who like betting on these obscure college football games, JSU, 19.5-point favorites going into tonight's game. For those of us who grew up like me in the 1980s, will always remember the early 80s where Fernando Mania took over Major League Baseball and LA. Fernando Valenzuela started off that season 8-0. He was the big story in baseball, and he's unfortunately the big story today in baseball. He passed away last night at the age of 63. He took a leave of absence away from the Dodgers broadcast booth. He was one of the great pitchers in the early 1980s, and honestly, with 2 days before the World Series begins in Los Angeles, you can only imagine how they will honor him as the series begins at Chavez Ravine on Friday night. Speaking of which, the starters have been set for the Yankees and Dodgers in Game 1. Garrett Cole will start for the Yankees on Friday night. Jack Flaherty will start for the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman says he ain't going to miss the World Series. He says, I don't think there's any question on anybody's mind that I won't be in the lineup Game 1, he said on a video conference. So expect Freddie Freeman to play there. Nestor Cortez says he knows the consequences. He could potentially get more hurt in his arm, elbow flexor, but says he wants to play and play for the Yankees in the World Series. We'll see if he does. And also Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, came out yesterday on a podcast and said that the Rays will play somewhere in the area, in the Tampa-St. Pete area, despite the fact that Tropicana Field won't be ready for the start of the season. As we mentioned, a ton of NBA games going on tonight. We'll run them all down throughout the show, folks, but let me get to them real quick. The Bucks are 4-point road favorites tonight at Philly. They're without their big stars. The Heat will take on the Magic tonight as they open up the season. Miami is -2. Clippers +5, home underdogs to the Suns in their first game in their new stadium. And Steph Curry and the Warriors are 5.5-point favorites tonight against the Portland Trailblazers. Also, one note from the National Hockey League, coming off a Stanley Cup championship, Paul Maurice, the head coach of the Florida Panthers, has been extended. Predators also won their first game of the season. Hat trick for Brandon Hagel as the Lightning beat the Devils in a high-scoring affair, 8-5. Rangers beat the Canadiens 7-2. Coming up next, Michael DeCourcy previews a couple of games in the National Football League, including the matchup between the Eagles and Bengals. Next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night, I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
That kid on the two-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time to take a look at the NFL slate coming up this week. It all begins tomorrow night, and naturally we bring in Michael DeCourcy every week to go over the latest, some news notes, of course, information. And Mike, let's just dive right in. Why not? More scoring we're seeing in the National Football League, certainly across the board. And this is one of those games where a lot of points are projected for a couple of reasons. One, the Eagles are playing better. And number two, the Bengals can't stop anybody, essentially, other than Cleveland, I guess. That's the only team they've stopped all year. So the Bengals are home favorites. They're 2.5-point favorites. But as you see here, one of the higher totals in the NFL on the board, for good reason, this week at 48.5. Did you buy what you saw with the Eagles last week in their dominant performance, both on offense and, by the way, I should mention, on defense, too, against the Giants?
I thought the defense was impressive. There's no doubt. You need a team in the NFL to 3 points, and you've performed really well. I don't totally buy what I saw from the Eagles on the other side of the football, because although you can have a great Saquon Barkley game any week, you're not going to have that game any week. That was an amazing performance, over 170 yards. You're not going to likely get that against the Bengals on the road, where I think the Bengals, as a result, even though they have not been significant defensively, overall, they have been able to come up at moments. And the Cleveland game was a good example of where they really had to be good all day because Cleveland's defense is significant. So the Bengals knew that they had to stop Cleveland, and they did an effective job. Some of it was obviously the injury to Deshaun Watson. Going with the younger backup did not go. If Winston had been on the sideline for that, it might have been a different story. But going in the direction that the Browns did was a huge mistake. So I think that in general that the Bengals are a reasonable pick this week as a result. I don't know whether or not I'll play with the total, but I like the Bengals giving up the 2.5. I think they can cover that.
All right, so the Bengals, of course, who have dominated the Eagles through the years, by the way, although, going back 20 years, I don't know that it means anything anymore, but the last time they played was actually a tie during the 2020 season. Again, rosters look completely different. I mean, we're going back, almost to Boomer Esiason, I feel like here. We're not going to do that. Okay, so now the odds to win the NFC East, let's take a quick look at this and ask you if this has changed. The Commanders and Eagles are the two favorites here. Do you like one team over the other in this division? Or, is it possible Dallas gets back in? That's kind of hard to believe. I know the Giants are done.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Dallas get into this at this point. I think it's between the two, and a lot of it depends on quarterback health. Right now, Jalen Hurts has been healthy all year. The Commanders losing their quarterback, we saw what happened on Sunday when that occurred. So it can't happen again. And I've always wondered if Jaden Daniels was able to handle the physical pounding that comes in the NFL. That was my doubt about him coming in. His skill is obviously, I'll admit, I underrated his skill level, what he would be able to do. But I still wonder about the pounding. So I understand going with the Eagles to bet on that with them as the favorite. But I don't know that I would make a bet on anybody in that division because I don't think the price is good enough.
All right. So now, interesting, I think, line here between the Texans and Colts. Now, we know that Houston is the better team between the two, but Mike, Houston's been wildly inconsistent on offense this season. They've won games, and a lot of them have been closer than they needed to be. And on the Colts side at this point, I mean, Indianapolis has got to be praying that Anthony Richardson shows a lot more than he's shown thus far. We thought going into the year, based on what we saw in a few games last year, that he could potentially be, an elite quarterback in the NFL. He hasn't even come close. Total 46.5 in this game. I don't see them making a switch. You cannot do that. I mean, they invested such a high pick in Richardson, so my guess is he's going to play, but it was not pretty last week against Miami.
No, it was not. But I think the first prayer that they have to say, Craig, is Jonathan Taylor back healthy for this one. Because if that happens, a lot changes for them. But I look at this from Houston's side, and I can't stress how important a game this is for Houston and for them to play and play well because they're coming off a really difficult stretch of their schedule. Next week, maybe not so daunting, but you look down the road in 2 weeks, and now you're playing Detroit. So I don't like the idea that Houston can go in and take this lightly or feel like we got through the tough part of our schedule, and now we've got a relatively comfortable home game. They've got to play great this weekend, and that's kind of why I favor them a little bit, even giving the significant number of points that they are. I think Houston understands how important this game is to dominate. It's a division game. They've already got to win over the Colts. If they can get that sweep, it'll be huge in the pursuit of the division champion. And just getting into the playoffs in the AFC isn't enough. You've got to try to avoid the Chiefs for as long as you can, and you're not doing that if you're dropping home games to the Colts.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, historical game coming up this week. Always used to be fun between the Cowboys and 49ers. San Francisco 4.5-point favorites. Dallas off a bye, generally pretty good with Dak and company. San Francisco definitely up against it, although they did, with all the bad news, they did get a little bit of good news yesterday with Deebo Samuel leaving the hospital. Otherwise, it's probably Jawan Jennings and George Kittle and then a bunch of rookies playing. Maybe Ricky Pearsall gets into the action. But look, San Francisco's very hurt. But right now, Mike, I don't even know what to expect from Dallas. I could see Dallas winning this game easily, and I can see them losing 51-0. That's the problem with them. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're a believer in the Cowboys, go for it. But if you're thinking about betting on the Niners, what are you betting on? You're betting on thoughts and prayers. You don't have any idea who's going to play where for them right now. No Ayuk. We don't know if Deebo will play. Kittle's even a little banged up, although he'll probably go. And of course, Christian McCaffrey's still not ready. So there's no way that I'm betting on the Niners this week. If you believe in the Cowboys, go for it. But you just don't know enough about the Niners to say, yes, I'm in on them.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Mike, thanks again for coming on the show. Have a great rest of your week. All right, coming up next is the SportsGrid Sound Off, the big surprise in college football, the Indiana Hoosiers. Can they continue their run? Joe Lisi will tell us next.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. How about a huge game this week, of course, between one team that you didn't think would be in it and another that probably should have been. Also, we'll dive into the latest at Ohio State and touch on some NBA. Time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. You know, it's sort of fascinating when you think about it. You got Indiana taking on Washington this week, and if I told you at the beginning of the season that one team was ranked 13th, and one team was unranked, you probably would have said, well, the Huskies are ranked and the Hoosiers are not. That has not been the case. Indiana has been one of the best teams in college football. They're undefeated. They're ranked 13th in the country. And Washington, losing all those players, including Michael Penix, haven't really lived up to their standard. But they are coming off a week off. Can they knock off the 13th ranked Indiana Hoosiers, who have some injury concerns at the quarterback position? Let's get a preview with our very own Joe Lisi.
Huge Big Ten battle taking place in Bloomington. You got undefeated Indiana sitting at 7-0, and the Washington Huskies. Huskies are on the road, 6.5-point underdogs with an extra week of preparation. Huskies last played 2 weeks ago on the road in Iowa City and lost that matchup 40-16. But they might have the quarterback advantage heading into this battle Saturday afternoon. Indiana beat down on Nebraska 56-7. Their starting quarterback, Curtis Rourke, did throw for 189 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but hurt his thumb, will not play in this matchup. It'll be backup Taven Jackson. Jackson stepped in and led that offense. They put up 56 points on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Indiana rushed and pounded the rock for 215 yards on the ground and forced 5 turnovers. They're a 6.5-point home favorite, but without Curtis Rourke in that lineup, I lean to Washington early on. Now, Craig, back to you.
All right, thanks very much. And look, I think that's the thing at this point, is that most people, and probably even the books, don't really believe in this undefeated Indiana season that they're having. So we'll see if this is the week they get knocked off. All right, now let's move on to the Ohio State Buckeyes, where things are all not so rosy. Of course, after their loss to Oregon, on the outside looking in as far as the top seed, but Ohio State's still very much in the playoff picture, although you wouldn't know it from hearing from head coach Ryan Day, who doesn't seem to be cheery about anything.
Again, I'm not happy with anything right now, but certainly we want to get more pressure on the quarterback. There's no question. And it's the coach's job to make sure that we put our players in a situation, an environment to be successful. So that's the first thing we got to look at. And then it's the player's job to go do it and execute it. So all those things were part of the conversation this past week. And, we definitely need to do a better job there. Yeah, well, like you come out of the game and you got to identify the things that didn't work, which we did. Make some adjustments. Do I need to overhaul everything? No, we don't need to overhaul everything, But there are some things, the way that, we're coaching things, the way that we're, scheming some things, we need to make adjustments there. There's no question. But once all that settles, you realize that, there's a lot of football ahead of us. And you look ahead at, what we got in the second half of the season and then right here with Nebraska. And so, you quickly move on to that and realize that, there's a lot of teams across the country that have taken a loss. So now we got to go adjust and play our best football here in the second half of the season. You could have as many as, 10 games from here on out. So, that's important to make sure that we now move forward. We learn from the game, but we can't dwell on it. We got to move forward and we got to focus on Nebraska.
You would assume that Nebraska will be pretty fired up after getting blown out last week, but you also would assume that the Buckeyes will bounce back after that tough loss to Oregon a couple of weeks ago. Meanwhile, bouncing back is not really in the cards when you think about it. I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers going into tonight's game with Milwaukee are going to be without two of their big stars. Their head coach, Nick Nurse, is up against it going into the matchup.
I mean, pretty much the way they're laid out. Like, again, they're evaluating them here as we go. Just as soon as we can get them out there and get them scrimmaging, and get them ramped up, and get them in the action. I mean, listen, I think that we're being really smart and sticking to the plan with Joel. PG obviously wasn't. Him not playing was certainly not part of the plan, right? He had a injury in a game, so we're managing that now. Absolutely respect how good both conferences are. East is really deep, West is really good. I mean, going out there and winning ball games is going to be a challenge, not only for us but for everyone every night. But we got some depth and we got some experience and we got some good players. We're going to go out there and see what we look like.
We'll have a full preview of the rest of the NBA slate coming up with Carlin Gay in just a few minutes. Coming up next, it's time to dive into the latest in news and sports betting with Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's bring in Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report here on the show. We'll dive into the very latest. Pat is jumping for joy after the big upset last week. I think you are. I mean, jumping for joy may be a little strong today, but anyway, Michigan State beats Iowa. I mean, this is like the biggest game of your season for the Spartans, I'm going to guess.
Well,
I mean, Michigan game would be big, but
that's the thing. We're going into Michigan week, and we're both 4-3, and I mean, so this week it's a big week. You might see me doing a lot of things next week if we win. Who knows? Michigan's still Michigan, and Michigan State's had an up and down year. We'll see, but hey, yeah, the Iowa one definitely gave me a little bit of hope heading into this Saturday.
I mean, bowl eligible coming up. You may have something to watch in December or January. Could be. All right. Let's dive into latest in sports betting, and we'll start off with your neighbor in Canada here. We'll talk about Alberta, some unfortunate delays here going into next year. I know that they're trying to do some different things. Tell us what they are and what happened here.
Yeah, so I mean, we knew that Alberta was coming next, and then earlier this year, Dave Nally, the Minister of Red Tape Reduction, maybe the coolest title there is, told the Canadian Gaming Summit he is indeed working on regulations. This was back in June. Maybe we'll get it up by the Grey Cup, which I think is next month, or at least before 2025. Well, we've heard operators getting excited about it during the August earnings season. Hey, we'll get a new market here soon. Because it is going to be an open market, open commercial market for sports betting and online gaming, just like Ontario. So operators are excited about this. It's a high GDP per capita province with, a very young population that likes to gamble, judging by the, stats that they have. But as it turns out, we got word last week from the red tape department that it will be pushed back to 2025 at least. And then I was not at G2E because I was on vacation, but, we had several people there who heard Mr. Nally talk about the process and kind of what's going on. And there he said he hopes by next October at the next G2E, he's able to talk about having an open market. So, this is going to be a long process. Earlier this year, again, he talked, they have to talk to all the stakeholders and figure out exactly what people want and everything like that. We know it's going to be very based on what Ontario has done. But ultimately that, they're still going to make adjustments and stuff. And he said right now the stakeholders and himself, Mr. Nally, wants more time to figure things out. So we'll see what happens when it might launch. Again, they had hoped before 2025. Now it's at least going to be later in 2025. He said he hopes to get some amendments going to their Provincial Gambling Act in the spring. So, people were hopeful that we'd have a new market going online in North America sometime this year. Not at this point now. And that is a little unfortunate for operators, but hey, they want to get it right and have a very successful market, and you can't blame them for that.
No, understood. Want to do it the right way. All right. Speaking of the right way and the wrong way, it's this vote in Missouri to legalize sports betting definitely seems like it's coming down to the wire. And then we got the note, and I know we talked about this earlier in the week, Pat, I believe it was Monday, that the ad campaigns have pulled back some of the money. So, naturally when you see this, you think to yourself, okay, what is the reasoning behind this? Is this thing going to pass? Is that why some of these negative ads have been pulled back? I mean, it does seem to me, based on the polling, that on November 5th, 6th, whatever, it feels like to me we're going to legalize sports betting. You're going to see it legalized in Missouri. It's not a guarantee, but this is sort of the indication that would push me more in that direction. Is that fair or no?
I think that's a definitely a fair read of the situation. I mean, we've talked about Missouri ad nauseum at this point for the last 3 years, and now about this election the last couple of months. And yeah, I mean, going into it, we've got plenty of ballot polls that say, 50+% of people are supportive, and all it needs is 50.1% to pass on election day. And to your point, you can never fully predict what's going to happen on election day. Who knows who comes out and actually votes, but the signs are pointing to it passing. And, that's big news for Winning for Missouri Education, the campaign supporting it. They're backed by DraftKings and FanDuel. Now, what happened is the Missouri Independent reported that the campaign against the ballot initiative, which is supported by Caesars because they don't like the ballot language that allows two untethered licenses, which of course would probably go to DraftKings and FanDuel, pulled more than $1 million in ads. And I think that's their spokesperson told the Missouri Independent that, they had tightened the race with the ads and they had achieved what they wanted to, but you got to think that if you're pulling it, you're kind of giving up. What's interesting is, going through the campaign finance reports and all that, you see that they paid quite a bit of money for some internal polling to see what the numbers were. Now, we haven't seen any numbers from this campaign. So you got to imagine if they're not releasing it and then they're pulling the ads, I'm not a political polling expert or political campaign expert by any means, but those signs kind of point to, maybe we're giving up.
Right.
Because, you'd think if the polling numbers were good for them, they'd release them and they'd keep pushing with the ads. But here they are pulling them. So, it's going to be a really interesting race these last 2 weeks. Again, it's a huge push by DraftKings, FanDuel, and the professional sports teams to legalize sports betting, something that the legislator hasn't been able to do the past 3 years. And if people are truly wanting it, this is their chance to say they want it and get it off the ground. So, again, you can't really predict what happens on Election Day, but, signs are pointing to it passing, and that's something I'll be watching close on that Tuesday, more so than, a lot of other races.
Yeah. I think that's the big one, at least for us, from our perspective. Okay, so more crackdown on the daily fantasy operators, and this coming in Massachusetts. I mean, basically, the sports books, I would guess, Pat, are pushing to eliminate some of the DFS operators if they're going to offer similar games to themselves. So I mean, look, this is not FanDuel and DraftKings suing Prize Picks, Underdog, and some of these other companies, but if the games are similar and the taxes are different, you see what the result is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little different, but to your point, we've seen a lot of regulators cracking down saying you can't do this here. And in fact, it was something that happened in Massachusetts back in March, where the Attorney General sent a few cease and desist, and Prize Picks and Underdog didn't receive those letters, but they still came to an agreement to say, hey, we're going to stop offering these products, switch to our peer-to-peer products and our normal DFS things versus their pick'em products. And so that was all good and fine. Now there's a guy suing Prize Picks, Underdog, and Yahoo for offering, he argues, illegal wagering. And he's suing to get all the money back from these companies that Massachusetts bettors have wagered with them, saying, to your point, that they're registered as DFS operators, not sports betting operators. Now, DraftKings and FanDuel, they can offer both types of products because they're registered as both. And so he's saying, you know what? No, I want to get this money back. A spokesperson from Underdog told me it is just an ambulance chaser. He doesn't even have an account with us. And discrediting him. It has 3 months to pick up more to become a class action lawsuit. We'll see if that happens. There's potential for it to be thrown out, a potential for a settlement. Who knows what actually happens? It's a very interesting case, though, that this guy's kind of saying, hey, I want this money back. You guys are making we're making $10 million a month off of illegal wagers by Massachusetts residents. I want to help him get it back. He says he'll give it back to charity if he wins. So a really interesting lawsuit to see what happens if it gets thrown out, if somebody throws a settlement at him, or if it goes to a judgment. We'll see what happens. But DFS is not a boring world right now.
No, definitely not. All right, Pat, great to catch up with you yet again. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Talk to you soon.
All right. Coming up next, we preview the slate in the NBA, including the game between the Bucks and injury-plagued Sixers. Ja Morant is back for Memphis, taking on the Utah Jazz. Phoenix on the road, taking on the Clippers in their brand new building. Who comes out on top of all of those games? Carlin Gay will join us next to go over the very latest. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFC selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Opening night of the NBA last night. A lot of fun to watch a couple of games. We've got a lot more tonight. Let's bring in Carlin Gay to preview all of the games, or at least the ones that are on the slate. It's great to see you again, Carlin. Thanks for coming on the show. And I don't know how you felt about last night. I guess it's like, we're, sports betting network here. And so my first thought last night was, generally speaking, in the NBA, I thought the first couple of weeks were filled with defenses and low-scoring games. But those four teams all went over 100 points yesterday. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what's in store here for the first week or two, but at least that was my takeaway from last night.
Yeah, it's weird. For many, many years, it was always you install your defense first, and then teams will figure out how to score later. And now it's been flipped. It's really been, this explosion of offense that we've seen throughout the league. And it's not just the Boston Celtics. Granted, they were the best offensive team last year. They're probably going to be the best offensive team in the league this year. So they did what they were supposed to do. But I think now as bettors, what you kind of have to look at is, chemistry, continuity. You had a big trade for the New York Knicks, actually two of them. Mikal Bridges is a new player on the team. He's starting to kind of learn what he needs to do with the New York Knicks. And then Karl Anthony Towns just got there about a month ago, so he didn't really have a full ramp-up process to get indoctrinated into this Knicks program. And you saw that. You saw that in real time. Meanwhile, the Celtics, same team. They do what they do. And meanwhile, Kristaps Porzingis is missing time. They're already used to that, right? Like, what team is he on that he doesn't miss time on? So they're kind of used to playing the way that they did, and they just picked up right where they left off from a year ago, and they shot a lot of threes. They're going to have, if you're betting the Celtics throughout the year, there's going to be games where they make 20 threes. There's going to be games where they don't make their threes, and the game's going to be a little bit closer. So you just got to kind of watch the storylines, or rather the scoring line, and kind of see, pick and choose, like, are they playing 3 games in 4 nights? That's probably a game where it's going to be a little bit closer. They might win it, but they might not cover that spread because those threes aren't going to be falling for them. And that's just going to be the way it goes this year in terms of basketball betting, which makes it fun for us because you really never know what you're going to get on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of the NBA, night-to-night basis. You never know who shows up. Okay, so, speaking of continuity, I mean, let's be honest, the 76ers, are used to playing without Joel Embiid. They're going to do it again tonight. Maxey usually steps up when he doesn't, and I guess that's why the line is what it is, Carlin. Most would be surprised a couple of weeks ago if I would have said, all right, they're not going to have George, they're not going to have Embiid. What are the Bucks favored by? Maybe some would have thought 5.5, 6, 7. No, not the case. Sixers have played okay without their stars. Milwaukee -4 on the road to open up the season. I believe Middleton also not playing in this game tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Chris Middleton's going to miss time, to start the season here. And you talk about the Bucks. The one thing, the continuity, they made the big trade last year where they got Damian Lillard on the team, And it really never seemed like him and Giannis Antetokounmpo were able to figure out and fit perfectly together. And that probably lends to the fact that, this line going into it is probably a little bit, shorter than it could be, because this Milwaukee Bucks team is still trying to figure out who they are under Doc Rivers. Remember last year they started the year with Adrian Griffin. They started off, I think they were 30-13 or something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. They were one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, but it didn't feel like they were making steps towards winning a championship. They go and get Doc Rivers, who has an under 500 record, but we really can't. The jury's still out on what he can bring to this table, because Giannis Antetokounmpo missed that playoff series. They get bounced in the first round, and without your best player, not much is going to happen there. This year's the year. They have a full training camp. They have a team together. They have their unit. Brook Lopez is playing. Bobby Portis is playing. You want Chris Middleton back. They have that core group that has won a championship before. Plus, you add Dame Lillard. So you try to figure out what you can actually do, with this team going forward. And tonight's going to be a good test for them to figure that out as a group going up against the Sixers squad. As you mentioned, they're also adding a big piece in Paul George. There's no continuity there. So that, how much time is it going to take the Sixers to really ramp up? I expect the Bucks to win this game. I expect them to win it going away. There's going to be, it's probably going to be close for the first half. So if you're looking at a first half bet, I would say it's going to be a little closer than expected. But then the Bucks pull away later in the game, because that first half crowd is going to be hot. Sixers are going to come out blazing a little bit. You mentioned Maxey. Mm-hmm. He probably goes over whatever his point total is going into this game. But then talent will prevail. And Milwaukee will be able to pull this one out on the road and definitely cover that 3.5.
All right, fair enough. Now, one of the big storylines tonight in the NBA will be the return of Ja Morant. Super high expectations, make or break. All the narratives are there for the Grizzlies going into the season. They're 3-point favorites tonight, some spots 4 against the Utah Jazz. 228 is the total here. Another one of those situations where you would expect extreme motivation on the side of Memphis and the Grizzlies, but it is opening night, Carlin. You just don't know.
Yeah, I expect the Grizzlies to come out and really show something here and show the world that, hey, we are a team that was really on the cusp of getting to that next level. Ja Morant goes through that off-court situation. He gets hurt. They bring in Marcus Smart. He gets hurt. Jaren Jackson Jr. was missing time last year, so they really didn't have their full complement of a roster to go forward and really prove that they're one of the better teams in the Western Conference. That starts tonight. They're going to be one of the surprise teams in the NBA. If you're looking at win totals, I would go over on the thing that they need going forward. And that injury bug, you hope that is a thing in the past, and they can have 70 games of Ja Morant playing at a high level. So Memphis, I expect them to go into Utah, a team that Utah's kind of figuring out what they are and maybe hoping to get Cooper Flagg at the end of the year. So a win is not a premium for them. They're just trying to learn and get better as the days go on. Memphis is really trying to make a statement, and you can't fall behind in the Western Conference because teams like OKC, Dallas, they're going to win their games. So Memphis has to take care of business in games like this where they're expected to win and win big.
All right, we got a minute left, Carlin. Does a new opening of a new stadium mean that you cover the spread tonight as the Clippers open up as 5-point dogs? We know Phoenix is much better, than LA, and I think maybe they've even factored in the fact that this is a brand new stadium that they're opening up tonight. 224.5 the total. Any shot LA keeps this close?
No shot LA keeps this close. I'm going to say this about the Suns. I expect the Suns to surprise a lot of people. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker have heard that they can't get it done for the longest time. Coming off the gold medal this past summer with the Olympics, I think they use that momentum into this NBA season. They're going to have a great regular season. Go over on your win totals for the Suns.
Okay, got it. And under on James Harden playing 40 games with the Clippers this year. Got it. Loud and clear. Soon. Thanks, Carlin.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. We're going to dive into some last licks in just a minute. Just a quick update in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis Colts, back on the practice field today. Finally, it's been weeks, so it looks like he could potentially return this week against the Houston Texans. Now it's time for us to get into the latest of the World Series. Finally, we got a price and an auction closing on Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 ball. And also get ready, folks. Another golf league is coming your way. It's time now for some last licks. All right, all the talk is finally being put on the golf course, so to speak. This has been going on for 2 years. We've heard about this TGL, the golf league. Well, they made it official yesterday. Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy coming to a indoor stadium near you. It is the tech-infused golf league, the TGL, which is getting set to debut a couple of weeks after the NFL gets into their playoffs. So basically, a lot of tech-oriented games being played indoors where you can watch and follow. And again, it's being backed by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. Now, if you're asking me how exactly this is going to work, what is it going to look like, how can I watch, folks, none of this is still clear. and I guess that's what makes me a little bit nervous. But needless to say, it is going to be played all indoors. And so during the winter, in December, January, February, which essentially you don't really see much golf going on outside of the tournaments that are in Hawaii, this is the new league that will be played. And my guess is it will be popular because, again, you have Tiger Woods backing it and you have Rory McIlroy involved in it as well. But needless to say, we've been talking about it here on the show now for almost 2 years, and we're finally going to get a tee-off sometime in December. Meanwhile, last night it became official. Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 home run ball was auctioned off by Golden Auction, and it ended up going for $4.4 million. It is the single highest piece of memorabilia in the modern age ever to be auctioned off for that amount of money. There was some speculation, maybe it'd be a $2 million, $3 million. Now, the only unfortunate part of this, folks, is we never learn. Well, I take it back. We often do not learn as to who is the person that ponied up this kind of money to get the ball. We have no idea. You can make your assumption that it's somebody from Japan or whatever. No one has a clue. But here's what we know. Stop giving the balls back when you catch the home run. You don't have to do it. You're not always going to get $4 million or $3 million or $2 million. But the fact that the Dodgers, we had heard, potentially offered this person who caught the ball $200,000. Imagine if that person gave the ball back, shook Ohtani's hand, and went home. They ended up costing themselves almost $4 million. So come on, enough with these baseball teams, trying to, finagle their way out of giving stuff to the fans. Congrats to this guy. Changed his life here in Miami, not far from me. $4 million. All right. Well, $4 million is like the price to get into the World Series, apparently. This is insane. You basically have to spend $1,000 to watch a World Series game in person this year. And I would tell you the reason why this is so incredible is not as much at Yankee Stadium as it is at Dodger Stadium. That place is huge. I mean, you could fit like 70,000 people at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. I was there just a couple of years ago for the All-Star game, and believe me, it was full, but nowhere near this $1,000 price mark. Needless to say, if you got the money, have fun. I'll be watching on television. I'll be streaming. I'll be watching those World Series games in the comfort of my house rather than spending $1,000. Well, Frank, of course. Frank's got all the money. Our producer here is going to one of the World Series games, maybe 2. Would he go to a game 5? Which game are you going to, Frank? 2, 3, or 3, 4, 5? Game 3. Okay. That'll do it for our show today. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to our guest contributors here on the show today, and they were Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report, Carlin Gay from Sporting News, and Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News as well. Also, thanks to Joe Lisi for that college football preview as well. Coming up next, we've got the early line. That is followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern. We have got some huge games tonight in the NBA. It is, soft opening night last night, big opening night tonight. Pharrell will have all that information as well as on Game Time Decisions, in-game live, and then Gabe covering it all for you tonight on Sports Rage. Also, National Hockey League action in addition to some college football, some smaller games as well. Thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday here on NewsWire. We'll be right back here tomorrow with another edition of the show. Thursday Night Football is back in the NFL. We'll cover that for you and get you ready for the upcoming week in both college and pro football, as well as the World Series on Friday night. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow at 11.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best 2 ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m.